When was the last time you took a leap of faith, trusting that everything is going to work out? Do you crave growth, or are you merely content with the status quo? If you want more out of your life, out of your career, and out of your relationships, you are in the right place. Take the leap and discover how to create a life by design rather than living it by default. Real success starts with you. Now here's your host, Colleen Biggs.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Take the Leap. I am your host, Colleen Biggs, and it is so wonderful to be snuggled up in the cold weather. You all hear me talk about it all summer. I'm just like, can we get any relief here in Arizona? And now the relief has come. The houses are decorated for all of the different holidays that we celebrate. I live in an awesome community here in Arizona, and we have multicultural events. We do all the different celebrations for all the different cultures within our community. So we not only have a tree lighting night, we also have a Hanukkah night. You know, I love all of the different diversities that we have in our community and how we celebrate each one of them. And I think that's so important for us to remember that maybe just because you celebrate Christmas doesn't mean everyone celebrates Christmas, and they might have a different holiday that they celebrate, and to respect them for that holiday that they celebrate, that they were raised on as a child and has become a tradition in their family. And, this is a time of year where we do a lot of giving. I just hosted an Empower and Elevate conference in November, and we raised a couple $1,000s for a local nonprofit that breaks generational poverty with women, puts them through programs to earn more money and certification so they can not be on government funding anymore. And I donate to a lot of nonprofits. We filled 3 boxes for food pantries, for the House of Refuge. And as we're talking about nonprofits, it's why Sami Bedell-Mulhern is here today, because nonprofits are still a business. And even though we have a big heart as donors, if you are the individual running the nonprofit, we have to remember that it's still a business. Yes, I know that you're doing this for a cause and you want to make a huge impact, but we can't be scared of jumping into digital marketing and using that to promote the nonprofit. So Sami's going to help us understand that a little bit more today. So especially if you are someone who's thinking about starting a nonprofit, own a nonprofit, running a nonprofit, work for a nonprofit, this is the podcast you want to be listening to today. But before we get to Sami, I do want to thank today's sponsor of the show, Phoenix Drone Pros. And at Phoenix Drone Pros, we love what we do and are passionate about each and every drone photography and video shoot. We've been in business since 2015, and our talent and skills show in the video production we deliver. We offer fast service for commercial real estate, movies, events, and construction site monitoring. We also provide drone virtual tours that are all the rage right now. These virtual tours are great for team building and entertainment. Contact us today at phoenixdronepros.com to schedule your shoot online or get more information. We capture everything, and we're franchising. So reach out for information on how you can purchase your own drone company today. Thank you, Phoenix Drone Pros. All right, let's talk about Miss Sami. She's the founder of The First Click and host of the Digital Marketing Therapy podcast. I love that. As a digital marketing strategist, she helps nonprofits utilize digital marketing to support their fundraising through their website, email marketing, and content creation. She currently lives in Minneapolis with her 2 kiddos, husband, and fur baby. Hey, Sam. Welcome
Hello.
to the show
Thanks.
today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm excited about this one. Sami and I were just talking about how she's got snow on the ground. I don't, because I'm in Arizona in the valley. We don't ever see snow. We do, although, put on our TV every day like a long, 11-hour YouTube loop of something AI that's like a cabin with snow falling outside and a roaring fire going, because it kind of makes us feel like, we're there. And my husband said, "Do you think it'll snow this year?" And I just looked at him. Nope, it hasn't snowed our entire lives in
I
Arizona.
love that.
So, Sami, why digital marketing? Well, how did you get into this? I know you've taken some leaps in your life.
Hmm.
You did what I did. You took a big leap without a backup. So let's talk about that because, this podcast is about designing your life, which means designing your business so that you get the best success, the optimal success from it. So talk to us about your leap.
Yeah. So I think, I graduated college and I would say that was the first leap was I just decided to start my own nonprofit, had no business doing that, but did, and it was great and it was a lot of fun. And I ran that for 5 years until I actually moved to Phoenix. I lived in Phoenix for 3.5 years. But I think I've just always kind of done the next thing, and kind of seen what opportunities are provided and kind of learned and grown from each of those. So I didn't go to school for marketing. I don't have any formal digital marketing training, but as I kind of did each thing, I just tried to soak up as much as I possibly could. And then the big leap, like you mentioned, was I was working for my dad, and I love him dearly, love his company dearly, but wanted him to be my dad and not my boss. We were not able to have dinner conversations that didn't revolve around work and all the things. So decided without another job, just, you know what, I think I'm just going to leave. And I started my own consulting business. And that's where we are today. And I just kind of took all of the best parts of what I loved from the jobs that I'd had and kind of created my own company to be able to provide support for organizations and help more organizations thrive.
I love that because I think so many paths come from our previous paths, and you
Mhm.
combine them all together. For example, I worked very closely with sponsors. I was responsible for bringing sponsors to big corporate conferences that we would do. And so now it's so easy for me when I run my own conferences to get sponsors
Yeah.
because, same with sponsors on my podcast. And, companies out there are looking for visibility in many, many, many different platforms. And so we just take what we know and what we've done and what we've done really, really well and kind of move that, moving forward in our lives. So you left your corporate job, back in the day, you didn't have a backup. You weren't sure exactly what you were going to do. And I think all of us have to go through that at some point where we're just like, I don't know exactly what my life looks like, but I know this isn't it. And it
Yeah.
needs to be something different. And then we start taking those baby steps, which are scary, to start designing our life. So what was it like working with the very first nonprofit that brought you on to work with in digital marketing? What was that like? Did you have fear? Were you like, can I deliver on this? I'm super nervous. We all go through that with our
Yeah.
kind of very first.
Well, and in the beginning, my business wasn't directed solely at nonprofits. I was just trying to get any client that I could.
Okay.
And so it was really a learning experience in like, what do I enjoy doing? What do I not enjoy doing? What services, I mean, people can hire me to do a variety of things, but I could find myself like, well, they want me to do SEO work and I can do it, but I would like procrastinate. And all of a sudden I was like, that's not work I want to do. So it was really taking in, um, it was more learning like how do I want to be with my clients? How do I want to be at, when I'm working? What do I want to enjoy doing? So, the first ones was like, yeah, okay, I can do that. And I would do it. And I was like, that wasn't fun. I don't want to do that anymore. So then the next client's like, okay, I'm going to ask different questions, better questions, more qualifying questions. So it was really just that learning of, um, also like we know what we know, and so I wasn't asking a lot of questions because I was assuming that they kind of, if I say to somebody, okay, well, do you have a brand guide? Because that's going to help me do my job. And they'll say yes. And then they give it to me and it's like 5 colors and a logo. Like that's not a brand guide, right? Like that doesn't give me all the information. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I learned I needed to be more clear, and more specific in my communication. So I would say that was the biggest hurdle with the first few clients, was like really setting the right expectations, figuring
Hmm.
out the language, figuring out how we were going to communicate, and what I was going to say yes to and what I was going to say no to. Because that's hard at the beginning too, to say no to somebody who wants to give you
Yeah.
money, but it's not always worth your efforts or your sanity to do that.
Right. Absolutely. And then usually most people don't get to that point till they start really defining their ideal client. and
Mm-hmm.
realizing that I know this person wants me to do XYZ, but like you said with SEO, that's not really what I enjoy doing. So how did you get to the point where you started really identifying that it was nonprofits that you wanted to work with? Because you said in the beginning you just were really working with any client in the digital
Mm-hmm.
marketing space.
It was really COVID. So when COVID happened and things were kind of, chaotic, I had a nonprofit client. I had a couple nonprofit clients that I was kind of working with on the side. And I quickly realized that so many, like the organizations that were doing great had certain things in place. They had their monthly donor programs in place already. They had great donor stewardship stuff. Like we'd been working with them on that. And the ones that didn't have that plan or had really bad donor retention or didn't really have a way to stay connected with people were struggling big time. And it didn't matter what your cause was, right? Like, yes, we know there's some nonprofits that really thrived during COVID because their services were really directly aligned with what people needed in that moment. And so that was really the flip because I saw that need and I knew that the digital marketing space and the things that we had implemented with some of our other clients could really be impactful. But these executive directors and development directors were drowning and they had nowhere to
Mhm.
go to kind of help them figure out what's the first step that I need to take in order
Yeah.
to work through this.
Yeah, you said that you find that a lot of nonprofits think they can just go to individuals and pour their heart out on why they think they should donate to a nonprofit and everyone's just going to open up their pocketbook, but it doesn't necessarily work that way because it's not about what's aligned with that individual possibly and what they're
Right.
looking. So why have how or I should say how have you found digital marketing to really be that missing piece for a lot of nonprofits? They do a lot of fundraisers. They invite a lot of individuals in person to hear stories of the individuals maybe in the nonprofit. This is a very typical thing because I've been to all of them, you
Yeah.
know. But talk to me more about the digital marketing side of it because there's the in-person physical going to donating,
Yep.
being at the breakfasts, whatever it might look like, meeting individuals in the actual program. But then tell me more about the digital marketing side of that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that it's not one or the other. They work
Oh no, yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm never suggesting that you just do a digital marketing strategy. That's not going to help you raise the money
Oh
you
no.
need. But
Yeah.
what it does is builds awareness and builds trust and allows you to stay top of mind with potential donors and with your current donor base. So, what I love about it is it's a great way to steward and stay present with your existing
Hmm.
donors while also giving you more visibility and growth with new potential people that might come into your sphere. Um, so, a social media post alone is not, again, going to garner a ton of donations for you,
Hmm.
but that messaging in alignment with an email that they get, in alignment with a phone call that they get, in alignment with a card that you might send them in the mail, is now all of a sudden they're like, okay, I'm going to be treated well here. They're going to take care of me. I trust them
Hmm.
with my dollars because nonprofits, you have to work a whole lot harder to get trust from donors that you're going to do with the money that what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
And what we know right now is people aren't giving less, but they're giving to less organizations. So if
Hmm.
I have $2,000 to give this year, I might in the past have given it to 6 or 7 different organizations. Well, now I'm more likely to pick one or two. So
Right.
it's more competitive to get those dollars. And so that connection and that visibility is really, really important.
Hmm. Yeah. And for nonprofits that are getting started, are you assisting them in the startup phase? Are you working with nonprofits more once they've already been established? Where do you come in? Or where's the sweet spot that you feel that digital marketing works for the nonprofit?
I mean, I think it works at any level. It's more about the culture within the organization and their ability to, their willingness to do it.
Mm,
Because as you know, it's about consistency, it's a commitment, and it's a long-term strategy, right? You're not going to start doing digital marketing and all of a sudden, like, all of these people are going to come out of the woodwork. All of a sudden, you're going to have 5,000 people on your email list and you're going to have like all this communication. So I think it's more about an organization that knows what their goals are, is very just like any business. I'm very specific. This is what we're trying to accomplish. This is who we're serving. And we are very rock solid on that. And then it's the team coming together to say, okay, this is the path we're moving on. We're going to start with this strategy first, and then we're going to implement this strategy, and then we're going to implement this strategy. We don't need to do it all at once. We don't need to do everything all at once. We want to be consistent. We want to have good quality content. So it doesn't matter the size or the age of the organization. It's their willingness to give it a shot.
Yeah.
And their willingness to be consistent.
For sure. I love that. All right. I want to move on to your digital marketing therapy podcast.
Yeah.
And why you called it digital marketing therapy. So let's start there.
Because I often find like we'll have somebody call us or say, can I do, like a free 30-minute consultation? I want to tell you a little bit about us. They come to us and they say, okay, we want to do social media. Or they'll have this like big issue, we aren't getting enough traffic to the website, whatever. They have this thing that's in their head that they think is the problem that they're not converting. And it's never what they think it is. Because we work off our gut. Like well, I'm on Facebook, so we should be focusing on Facebook. Well, no, you should be focusing where your potential audience is, right? So it's half of my conversations we get started with organizations is like winding them back and getting them back to the actual root problem and then moving forward. So it's not just we don't just sit down and say, okay, well, here's the strategy. It's like, okay, you understand the why behind it.
Yeah.
And know that it might not be what you think. The next step might not be what you think it is.
So if I go to your podcast, which we have the link for everyone to follow, what are we going to find? Are you interviewing individuals? Are you just talking and teaching more about digital marketing strategies? Tell me what's happening on the podcast.
Yeah, it's a combination of both. It's a lot of interviews. Colleen, you were on the podcast, so make sure you check out her episode.
Yeah, it was great.
It was awesome. And so we theme each month. So every month has a particular topic so that we can dive deep into a few different strategies around that. I do solo episodes as well, and they're much shorter because I don't know about you, but when I do a solo episode, I'm talking
it's
for
like
10 minutes. Yeah, I'm like, I'm done listening to myself. The interviews are so much more fun. So it's definitely a conversation. And then each month we have a freebie that you can also download. That's an additional resource for kind of the topics that we've talked about. So it's things like, monthly giving programs, setting your goals and how to actually execute them, social media, so we talk about a wide variety of topics.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So we have the links below for all of you to go to the Digital Marketing Therapy podcast. I highly recommend if you have a business that you put that on your podcast list of podcasts to listen to. You also have the First Click Marketing, and we can find you on Instagram and Facebook, as well as YouTube, Digital Marketing Therapy. You're on YouTube as well. And so I'm assuming your podcast is there as well, and we'll be able to find you out there on all of those channels. Sami, what would be one thing that you would say you said most companies think it's the one thing, right? Like, oh, I'm not getting traffic to my website. If this changes, then that'll change. I've seen it 1,000 times. There's so much that you need to do in a business that's closing I don't know how to explain it, but it's not opening the door, it's not closing the door, but it's like there's so many different pieces. If we look at your business in a circle, that we need to make sure that we're hitting all of those areas. It's not just the one like Google Ads that's going to make it for you. It's not just the networking in person that's going to do it. It's not just the one-on-one conversations. It's not just the having good SEO on your website. These are like all these things need to happen at the same time. But what advice would you give for someone if they're feeling like they just their business isn't taking off like they thought, or their nonprofit isn't getting to the level, and they're just feeling defeated? What would you say?
Yeah, and I've been there too in my business. And I
We
think
all have.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah. And I think it comes down to two things. I just went through a whole planning process for 2025 with my business coach, and the thing that hit me this year differently is she said, "What are you committed to?" So like you said, there's, 100 different strategies that you can do to hit your goal. And I think a lot of times we commit to things that we're not willing to execute. And so for me, it's okay, how are you actually spending your day and what are you doing? Because we tend
Mhm.
to think that we're doing all of these things. And just because you have the plan in place, if you're not executing on the plan, like we talked about in the podcast episodes, like you're not getting anywhere. You're not
Yeah.
doing the thing. And so a lot of times we sit down at our desk, we have our to-do list, we cross off a bunch of things, we feel really good about it. But it wasn't actually the things that we need to do to take that next step.
Mhm.
So I would say it's not a particular strategy per se. It is how are we as a team committing to the things we said we were going to do so that we have the ability to track that data, to understand what's working, to understand what's not, so that we can tweak and refine. So
Yeah.
if you're feeling overwhelmed and you feel like you're not getting the traction, it's likely, I know this is harsh, but it's likely that you are the problem or your team is not executing on the plan and the strategies that you committed to doing.
Hands down, hands down. So I want you to then to connect with Sammy because I mean, digital marketing is very important. So download the podcast, start following her there, and connect with her directly on any of these channels. You can DM her on Instagram or Facebook,
Yep.
get into her messages, slide in the back end, and have a conversation with her because this is very important and it is the sticking point of most businesses. There's so much that needs to be done. It's not just one thing, but I love that. We should just leave them with that. What are you committed to and what are you going to execute on? Because if you're not committed and executing on these things, most likely it's because you're not you've decided you weren't going to, commit to it. You said you were, but you really weren't.
Yeah.
And so, what are you really going to commit and execute? And I love that your business coach said that to you because I go through a plan with my clients every year in October where I look at what they did during the year, what worked, what didn't, and what they liked and what they didn't. I
Yeah.
think that's the other piece. You said, I just procrastinated, and procrastinated because you didn't like it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so we will procrastinate on the things we don't like. So don't put something on your plan that you say you're going to do if you don't like it, unless you plan on hiring a company to do it for you. And I think that's what we're talking about here today. So, you're the only you that's ever been, and you're the only you that's ever going to be. So, how are you going to take the commitments that you make and actually execute on them in 2025? That's a big
Yeah.
question to ask
Well, can I
today.
say one more thing on that
Yeah.
too? Is that the other dangerous piece is the comparison game. So
Oh,
when
yeah.
you say, like you said, well, they're taking off faster than me and yada, 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 we don't know what situation people are in. We don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe they got some crazy capital campaign or some donor out of the woodwork who like all of a sudden was like, we're going to give you $1 million. And all of a sudden they can skyrocket. Or, maybe they, decided to invest their money in building a team faster. So they have capacity for people where you invested more in the program that you're trying to, put out there, whatever. There's so many different ways that businesses grow and we don't know the
Yeah.
story. And likely we compare ourselves to people that are actually 10 years ahead of us. And so we see their success and we're trying
Mm.
to be at that same level, but we haven't put in the work yet. So
Yeah.
I think that is also the comparison piece. Like you gotta let it go, run your own race, and just like you said, there's only one you. You do you the way you want to,
Yeah.
and it will become more successful because you are being true to yourself in the work that you're doing.
For sure. For sure. I love leaving them with that. Well, with that, Sammy, thank you so much for being a guest on Take the Leap. We loved having you here. And to all of you out there today, don't forget, until next time, be you and be strong. Bye bye for now.
We hope you enjoyed our show today, as our guests shared their secrets on designing their life by taking the necessary leaps to expand their influence and attract the right people and clients into their lives. To start these easy steps for yourself, be sure to visit www.colleenbiggs.net/freebies to download the 7 ways to increase your exposure today.